Beautiful. Hi, everybody. This is the Delicately Wild podcast, and I have Sarah with me from Switzerland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Welcome to another episode, and I think we'll dive right in. Sarah and I met at a festival this year. What was this? June?
Yeah, it
June,
was June. It
yes,
was Burning
June.
Mountain in June.
Yeah, Burning Mountain, Switzerland in June, which is a really, really beautiful festival, my first festival in Europe. And I was attending to facilitate a breathwork session there, as well as a light language talk. Did you join that talk?
I did, yeah.
You did? Okay, because that was a very touch and go experience for me. I don't know how I feel about doing workshops in the teepee. But it was like one person, then two people, then three people. And then I think I kind of closed my eyes, if I remember correctly, and there was no lighting in there, although there was. I only found out afterwards. So yeah, I kind of stay in the background in these festival environments. I don't want to be like the person going, hey, it's my session right now. Please, can everybody turn their attention to this? Yet I also, travel far and wide to come and share the message. So I kind of need to find a good balance between that, because now in Germany, I kind of felt, how would I describe it? Like I was just like like a little bit of extra on the itinerary, right, that no one ever actually looked at the power of what it is that I teach and the years of experience that I have. And it was like, I really, really felt that. And it was shit. It was shit because I spent a lot of money to get there. But anyway, that's the big intro into how I met Sarah. Essentially, how we usually begin these sessions is for you to just share with regards to your awakening story, your story of awakening. This is really just a conversation about other humans dotted across the planet going through what they are going through. So please feel free to share.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so my story of my awakening. Yeah. Well, I would say it, looking back, of course, I can see how like basically my whole life up until then led me to where I am now. But I think a pivotal point was me really basically hitting a rock bottom with just the patterns I was living and breathing and thinking and feeling in.
Yeah.
So up until maybe I think it was 25, 26, I was very, very far from myself. I was strongly living in like preset tracks almost, like my family has a Persian background, so they had their own struggles and their own views of the world, right? And so they wanted to give me a better life, but that meant, you have to do something that makes sense. You have to excel, exactly. And
especially if it was the whole family structure that moved to Switzerland.
No, it was well, kind of, yes, but then there's also that part, right, where the whole constellation was kind of complicated. I mean, my parents both met in Iran, but my dad is half Swiss, and half Iranian, and that was kind of their ticket to come to Switzerland. And
that's an interesting genetic profile. I think it's fascinating. That's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah. And but then, so there was that mix. There was this part of like, you have to excel because that was just their reality, and they both did as well. They were both studied and both like passionate biologists, and my mother was the typical generation of like woman who had to fight for every single right that she has.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other part was that they divorced when I was around 3. And my dad's second marriage, his wife and I, we had a very tough constellation, but it was the whole situation that was hard on every single one of us. And I think that just led to like overwhelming situations. And so me growing up, I feel like there was a very, very fragile part of me. And what I didn't realize for a long time, that I think the beginning though was my birth. Because I still feel like I can feel the birth trauma. Okay. I was 6 weeks early due to, I don't know what you call that in English, but it's like basically toxicity. So
okay,
my mom got a fever and they had to get me out because her body was, I don't know, I guess like rejecting.
Yeah.
Or
we could say your soul was calling.
It pretty much.
Yeah.
And also she had a very stressful pregnancy. There was a lot of emotional things coming up for her when she was pregnant with me. And so
were you her first?
Her second.
Okay.
But her first daughter.
Okay.
And also, so, and after I was born, I was put in an incubator for 6 weeks because I was still early.
Yes.
But those first 6 weeks, I feel like were traumatizing because I was alone as a newborn.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there was this mix of this very early and deep kind of profound feeling of not being held and needing support and needing closeness, needing connection, wrapped up in all these layers of, well, you need to excel and you need to perform and you need to be tough and you know, the values of what it meant for me to be a woman were not, you can just be you. And like femininity for me, for a long time, I really rejected anything that looked feminine to me, or like I didn't allow myself pretty or beautiful because I felt like, no, you have to make it, you have to get somewhere, right? You have to. So, and the thing was, I was good at all of that. I did the job well that I was assigned. I was great. I was a great student. Teachers always loved me because I was so diligent and conscientious. I was an A+ people pleaser, you could say. And I think it was just, so I started studying psychology. That was one thing but beneath all these layers, there was still always something inside of me that found it hard to go against my gut.
Nice.
So instead of studying some kind of like natural science, like biology or chemistry or something, I just knew, no, I'm drawn to people. I'm drawn to humans. But yeah, so the years progressed. I studied. I got in a few relationships, and one specifically was extremely codependent because I was just such a codependent person. And it all kind of like escalated at some point because I had done this smooth career path, no hiccups, you know, it was a great performance. On the outside, everything looked so perfect. My relationship on the outside, everything looked perfect. It's like, oh, she's successful, she's pretty, she's confident, she's smart, she's got her life together. But the one thing that kind of gave it all away was that in the meantime, that kind of had started at the end of high school. I started suffering from major digestive issues. And at some point, I'd gone through the entire medical loop, gone through all the specialists, all the lab testing, all the blood testing, all the breath testing, all the protocols, all the diets, all the whatnot. And it wasn't really helping. Right. And so this was this whole, like, in my head, I was like, but I'm doing it all. Well, I was not. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and so when that kind of hit its worst and my relationship hit its worst because we were just fighting because we were so enmeshed and life was not bringing me joy because I was doing all the right things, but not what I was truly, what my heart wanted.
Yeah.
That was January 2020, actually.
Okay.
It was like a huge
timeline.
Boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And January 2020, I moved out from our shared apartment. And that was kind of, I think that was the first step towards liberation. When I said, okay, no, I can't do this. I need to go. And I think that was just the first step of me saying, okay, I'm willing to find out who I am.
Good. And I mean, what happened with the physical diagnosis from that juncture with your gut stuff?
It was still there, but that was also around the time when I said, okay, you know what, I'm also ready now to try something else. And up until then, I had only used services from our medical system that were included in my health insurance because I'm entitled to healthcare because I'm paying for my health insurance premium every month. So I should be helped like this. But at some point I was like, clearly I'm still suffering, so might consult a naturopath, even if that means having to, dish out a little more.
Yeah.
And looking back again, those were, those steps where I was willing to take hurdles because I knew they were for me.
Yeah.
And that helped. Working with her helped, like, at least symptomatically it helped, but I guess it gave me enough relief for me to feel free in my life again, even if it might have been just symptom-based. And that window, so I had gotten out of this relationship, my gut was getting better. I was suddenly in this big new space of like, I can explore who I am.
Yeah.
And I guess that's when the unraveling slowly started. So over the next, that was since 2020. So over the next 3 years, it was a constant, not linear at all, but process of digging deeper and shedding layers and coming closer to the truth of who I am. And at first it was very surface level. So I had started at a school that was basically a training to become a psychotherapist after doing psychology. So there I had to go to therapy myself as a part of it. And that, I feel like that was a great base to start from. I was basically starting to work through my layers of trauma from this life.
Yeah.
And that already helped me untangle a lot. And after the first year, though, I kind of hit a plateau. I remember, I think I turned 27, and I felt like, okay, well, you've moved through some big emotional things, and you've become more responsible, and your life is more in your hands, but I don't know if this is it. I still felt like there was something I was missing. And interestingly, my body would mirror it to me. At the end of that year, I suddenly found like an abscess on my body again. I'd had those before that needed to get surgically removed. And that was a shocker, because again, it was one of those moments where I thought, hey, I thought I'm doing it all right. I thought, you know, I'm in therapy, I'm working on myself, but there was still a sense of feeling lost somehow, without direction. I was like, well, is this just supposed to be it? And that night, I remember it was like instantly, my mind just produced the image of a woman I had once met at work, and we didn't know each other well, but I knew that she was a coach of some sorts, and she had a year ago or so said a few lines to me that had pierced to the core of who I was.
Beautiful.
She had seen me and seen through all the masks that I'd even fooled myself with.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone around me, including myself.
Yeah.
Without having known me for a long time.
Yeah.
So I remember that night, it was kind of something just pulled a lever and was like, okay, there's, you know, no more beating around the bush. I called her up and I said, Nadine, are you still coaching? I think I need to work with you. Because you know something. And I mean, that was crazy. That was crazy, because I remember in order to be able to work with her, I needed to pick up a loan, because her pricing was just way beyond anything. But still, I just knew I have to do this. I was like, okay, other people take up a loan for education or whatnot. I never did that, but this is my life, and I want it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was and I still think that was the best thing. There may have been other ways. Then I didn't see any, and I'm glad I did that.
Good.
And so again, over a whole year, it was digging even deeper through the muck. It felt that was the year, that was entire 2021. I felt like I was digging myself through layers and layers and layers of just dirt. I felt like I was pulling myself out of a hole. But at the end of that year of working with her, and I think that has been what ultimately opened me up to the path of no longer, I'm trying to find the right words, but working with her at the end of that year, I had found my intuition. I connected with my soul. I suddenly had access to certain memories or just snippets of past lives, and basically I opened up spiritually. And that was when I knew, oh, that's what was missing.
The connection to the soul. Yeah.
And then from then on, I mean, it became like a sense, like a sense that I hadn't used. And I started to deepen my connection with that. And from then on, it started feeling like expanding. It no longer felt like I'm digging myself out of this shithole. It felt like, oh, I can expand.
Yeah, nice.
And I think that's what's been happening ever since, basically. Beautiful.
So 2022 to now, we are in 2023, right? I have to check sometimes. I'm like so disconnected from time. essentially, but yeah, and it's going so far. So 2022 up to now has been reactivation into the hearts and understanding past, present, future from a soul perspective.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And it's like that, and just deconditioning in parallel. It feels a lot more like just shedding weight now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
shedding little parts of things where I realize, oh yeah, that's right, this isn't me, and that isn't me, and this isn't me, and that's not my energy either, and this is, and just.
And
Yeah.
how do you feel? Like, I mean, one of the reasons I came to Europe was, you know, I been like grappling with this title lately, and it feels like, however, it's come into my sphere, and I need to trust what that is without having attachment to it. But so the word is guardian, as a guardian, right? And of course, there are these times when I understand that I am a very powerful woman and a very ancient soul, and we begin to, you know, labels and identities come into our field that make us feel uncomfortable, and then we step into that role without, you know, without the drama, and without, you know, we really challenge ourselves to step into that role. And so I'm going through this process now. It happened, the same thing happened with me with the title shaman, you know, where I was like, oh my God, I can't use this word. I don't have enough training, da, da, da. But now it's like, am I? Yes, I am. For damn sure. You know, can we use the word, you know, so I used to use the word medicine woman rather than shaman, but now I'm very comfortable using them, you know, both. But now there's this word guardian, and I'm like, oh, this is a, you know, this is a big one. But
yeah.
I don't know why I went into this. Hold on. It matters not. Yeah. So stepping into this role of guardian, it's like you kind of have resistance, and you're just like, okay, but it's come into my field, and ultimately we need to trust ourselves, right? We need to trust ourselves. And so through this identification process that inevitably will dissolve at some point in time within your experience, but it's like the next initiation level. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, within your evolutionary process, stepping into the intuit, she who is now observant, she who is now decisive and aware and disciplined and centered, she who is now expanding. I was talking about coming to Europe as the observer. What I'm, you know, and I'm often just observing as the silent one. And so my question to you is, from the perspective of she who is living in Europe, with a European friendship group, how has your reality changed in terms of relationships and friendships? And how do you see yourself versus, and not that I'm trying to create separation, it's just a conversation, guys. But how do you view your kin? How do you view your community? How do you view the Swiss? That's a curious thing for me, because, like I say, my big initiation, stepping into Europe with hardly any money, was last year, going to Boom Festival. So Boom Festival is like 60,000 people. I'm an energy worker, like I'm pretty sensitive, but I have been going to these things my whole life. And for me, it's not to go party, it's an initiation. It's a completely different story for me. And so I'm observing and I'm watching, and maybe I'll share a little bit now with regards to what I have observed, but I'd love your perspective as well.
Okay, just to make sure I understand. So what are you interested in hearing? My the way I feel about Europe or Switzerland, or just, yeah, like my kin, my European community in that sense.
Yes, in terms of their levels of consciousness. Yeah.
Ooh, in terms of their levels of consciousness. That's very interesting. Well, I think at first, when I was very new to my awakening, you could say, wherever I am now, I can't say because I feel like the spectrum is infinite, but like it's all relative. But when it was still very, very new to me, and I was waking up and seeing behind things and realizing that no, things are not necessarily all the way they seem.
Yeah.
Um,
And obviously, this is happening at the exact same timeline of the most intense existential time that Earth, well, maybe not that the Earth has gone through, but in our lives, yeah.
Right.
In that which we call modern civilization, or whatever you want to call it, yeah.
Yeah. At first, I felt very lonely. At first, it seemed to me like what I always like to describe it as, I also told my friends, was always like, I feel like we're all starring in a movie, but I'm the only one who's aware that we're actually acting. That was I was like, how do you not see this? This is a movie. Like, do you not see what we're doing here? And
that's so funny, because one of the other souls or pillars of light that are on in our AZURITE temple, we were talking about the archetype of the actor. Yeah, so
it's incredible. And so at first I felt so alone. I didn't really, or I had this perception of everyone else is sleepwalking, but it has really changed. And I think it has also, it has a lot to do with what I feel like internally, but it's, there was also I went through a phase where I would judge, where my ego would attach to this, and I would feel like, being conscious is better. And now, specifically this year, things feel very different. I feel so much more love and connectedness to my entire community, to all of us, irrespective of their level of consciousness.
nice.
And it's kind of moved to a point where, also with a certain amount of like disidentification, right, from my European community, and still being a part of it, I can look at it from more of a distance and truly appreciate, for example, certain levels of, like, certain, yes, degrees of freedom that we do have in the public space.
Yes.
And that just is an absolute privilege. I think that is something to be aware of, that especially living in Switzerland, we like to complain on a very high level, and it is legitimate. I think we should still strive for betterment. There's always room for improvement, but it's also important to be aware of the fact that this is a tiny country with a lot of privilege that is not
Experienced by many.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And it happens to be one of the most beautiful countries as well. It's
absolutely.
It's like exquisite.
Absolutely. And so I think really recently I've just been feeling a lot more appreciation, really. Just so much more appreciation and connectedness, and feeling blessed to, to be here and to be able, I mean, I didn't, quotation marks, right? I can say I didn't do anything to be born here. And I'm lucky I was given this life. And so really, I think, imagining this whole path of awakening, and I feel like Europe, and from what I can say, Switzerland, we're in a really lucky place to be able to go through that in such a, I can speak for myself, like, despite hardships of my family, and despite, troubles I had as well, I think I feel so blessed that I've been able to go through all that in an environment where I didn't have to worry about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
still actually very held,
Mm.
considering, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the interesting thing, because what I observed last year, and I'm speaking to specifically Boom Festival, was this very the sense of freedom, and I'd speak specifically to an age group of, let's say, people in their 20s to 30s, you know, like this decade of people, because these are our future, you know. I mean, not that I'm still not part of that, but you know, it's like I want to see where the young people are. And again, not that I'm saying I'm a granny, but I am some sort of galactic grandmother.
Yeah.
I mean, in mushroom ceremony, it's been so, I don't know what the word I want to use is, so like ego destroying, not that I'm in my ego, but humorously so, where people are like, oh my God, you are fucking old. And I'm like, okay, just pump the brakes there. Am I not a priestess or something? They're like, no, you're just old. Like, you are old. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, thanks guys. But anyway, so looking at this age group, I was watching and observing, and it's like this, it was this beautiful sense of freedom, which I feel Europe's structure has provided for people. And that freedom has allowed people to really come into their creative space. So this really strong solar plexus energy, right? A strong solar plexus energy, confident. So confidence, very much that word. I was like, this is very confident, very, very confident. And again, it's because the freedoms have allowed you to be that. And where I know where this is important is, or where this is powerful, is noticing the differences between different countries. So for example's sake, in South Africa, that confidence still needs to rise, because we're still sitting in the base chakra in the space of not feeling secure, because of, you know, our country's crime rates, or our you know, exchange rate, our money's value, things like that. But specifically the crime. It's an
Hold on,
intense.
Brigitte. I'm having someone ring my bell.
No worries.
I didn't want to be disturbed, but I have the feeling. Can I
Yeah.
pop off real quick?
Let me pause.
I'll be back in a
quickly.
second.
Yeah, so it's like this level of confidence that Europeans have, and South Africans, it feels like they're still managing the foundational base chakra of really supporting themselves financially. And, you know, we've got to buy a car, whereas I'm not saying Europeans don't, but you've got a public transport system. You can travel to France and pop over to Denmark and head to a festival in Holland. And that is an expansive experience for a consciousness. Whereas, you know, if we want to take a trip, it's either in the car. Okay, cool. We have a beautiful country, beautiful, 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 beautiful. But you're still, the mindset and the program is still going, oh, well, I'm still in South African borders. I'm still with my group, my tribe. Maybe I'm not learning as much. Yes, the land mass begins to change, and we learn and experience from that land mass being different. You know, KwaZulu-Natal is different from Western Cape, is different from Eastern Cape, which is different from the interior, and all of that. But we, you know, for us to travel anywhere is really, really expensive for many of us. So there's this opportunity that exists with these Europeans. However, what I notice is like this, because of that freedom, there is also this potential to fall into, I mean, I'm going to use this because it's, let's say it's a spiritually based podcast without trying to, you know, create separation here, but it has potential to drop you into a love and light bomb, or a love and light bubble, you know, where the world is good, we've got our freedoms, we're confident, we are up and coming young youth that have education and medical systems and this and that and that. But so that's amazing if that remains. But if we are in the timeline we are in, and the light and shadow workers are doing the level of work that they are to dissolve these timelines. And when that all comes crushing down, these beautiful, young, confident souls are going to go through a massive wake-up call. So it's like, and this is where I have the conversation with myself about, you know, psychedelics have such a huge potential to wake people up and open the mind's eye and give different perspective on reality and life and creation and philosophies and all these things. But when your real world environment is changing, I think that is the biggest expansion for the soul, the embodied reality that you're actually living in. So floods, you know, volcanoes, earthquakes, banking systems failing, all of these things, that is when we begin to fucking get shit starts popping, you know. And to me, I guess that's a question to you of like, and also please understand, I understand that all, you know, all timelines are running simultaneously, and we have the potential to ride through the waves of timelines and create stability on those that are most efficient and effective for us. But yeah, there's still mass destabilization happening, and that will continue because we're in a great grand battle of the, you know, on the stage here as the actors. So I'd love your perspective on that. You know, are the Europeans, even though they are moving through awakening and shifts, do you feel that there's too much of a little bubble going on? Have they done enough shadow work? Are they too comfortable?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well,
because there's one thing I can say is Africans, or specifically South Africans, we are strong. We've had electricity cutouts now for over 10 years, and the electricity keeps getting more and more and more and more expensive, and we keep getting less and less and less and less electricity. So it's like that changes business. Like, we don't shower, you know, if we don't shower every day, it's okay, you know, but Europeans, I don't know if they can.
I mean, it's interesting that you voiced that, because when I think back to the pandemic, because that was a little bit of a sneak peek at potential state of, you know, disorder or chaos.
Correct. Please do go ahead. Because we're about to enter into another lockdown phase, you know. So, and I'm new to Europe during this kind of restrictive phase, so I am curious.
And it's very interesting. And here, I think I might have to say that different European countries did handle it very differently.
Yes.
So again, then there I see Europe as less homogenous as it may seem.
Yes.
But I have mixed feelings on this. So on one hand, I feel that I was genuinely personally unpleasantly shocked as to like what degree of separation was possible.
Yes.
That was quite, that was very unsettling to feel.
And how quickly that happened.
How quickly and how easily and how, just how suddenly people were divided, very strongly divided. So that division's one thing, and that did not make me feel very optimistic. Simply because I felt that a lot of people were very strongly identified with their opinions, didn't have much capacity for holding different truths. That's what it felt like to me.
Yes.
And the other thing was, but again, I don't want to paint a completely black picture. What I also realized in Switzerland was, while there was division, I also felt a strong pull and a strong resistance towards this pressure that was coming from somewhere.
Yes.
I could also feel that there was something, some kind of body, some kind of unity that was like, okay, you can push us and you can exude pressure, but at some point there's going to be a breaking point. and we will not. I think Swiss, especially Swiss mentality, is very conservative, and we like the sense of safety and security, and we're willing, I say we, but the general Swiss populace, the way I perceive it, is willing to sacrifice a lot of freedom for perceived safety.
Yes.
Um,
So herein lies the obedient citizen.
yes, but it has a different nuance to it because of Switzerland's history. I think it's just very ingrained in the identity of this country that conservatism has brought us where we are today. And has also really, has preserved a certain standard of living. So this is a strategy that it's the only strategy Switzerland's familiar with, right? And so far it has got us very far. So that's just the experience that we like to look at.
Reference.
Exactly. That's our reference. But at the same time, it felt to me like we were close to reaching a breaking point in this strong pressured division, this restriction. And that again made me hopeful in the sense that I felt like, yes, okay, the people are willing to sacrifice a lot for perceived freedom or perceived safety. But it's also very, at some point, it didn't feel to me like it would tip to, actually, no, I can't say this. It felt kind of 50-50. It felt to me like we were nearing a state where it was like 50-50 to either kind of succumb and say, fine, okay, because we want to be safe, we're just going to stick with this and conform and turn this into a totalitarian system, kind of, or not.
50-50 is an interesting statistic there.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because what it brings up in me is, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, this is very interesting. I'm literally having quite a somatic experience here where I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like, it's so Swiss, I guess.
Yeah.
It's so Swiss. We can go to humor. Yeah, we can go to humor and say it's so Swiss, but like, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting. So that was in that timeline, and you were doing all this coaching work during that timeline. But let's say, and we're not dancing around this topic, information has come out, etc., etc. People have done their research. I mean, the Swiss are pretty academic based, one would hope. We would think they're logical thinkers, strategists and things like that. I don't know, intelligent people, intelligent people who feel safe, can think nicely, they can have beautiful cognitive processes. In this next timeline of new agendas coming through, where do you feel that percentage is going to lean? Like, and do you feel the research that has come out and this time that people have had to breathe has dropped people into further shadow work, or they haven't yet been pressurized enough? Because for me, the reason I'm saying this, or the reason I'm pushing the topic, is one, just curiosity, because I can see how you're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about being the representative of Switzerland right now in this conversation. But
absolutely,
it's just like we say, just a conversation. But yeah, it's just a conversation. I'm curious.
And exactly, and obviously, this is my very personal perspective and experience, anyways. So, but, and it's interesting because I set 50-50 because truly it felt open to me. The outcome felt open to me. I could not have said which way it would have. I could feel a valid probability on each side, And personally, I still don't feel particularly hopeful or pessimistic. And
yeah, it's interesting because like you say, the perceived safety that has been created through your economic system, it is comfortable. It's comfortable and it's nice, and you live in a beautiful place, and it's a banking space, you know, and this is it's banking and money. It's banking and money. It's like Liechtenstein, you know. I've got a Liechtenstein passport, and I'm having deep downloads of needing to have a little conversation with the Fürst or whoever the Duke is or whatever. And because I'm just in the space of, I'm sovereign, motherfucker. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, I want to have a cup of tea and have a discussion with you. I want to be given land, and I want to know what you have to say about that. And I
love that.
Yeah, I happen to be a Liechtenstein citizen, of which there aren't many on the planet, who happens to be activated at a certain level of DNA. There's no way rich banking states or countries have, their leaders don't have esoteric influence. They're in the game, they're in the agenda, they know all this shit. So if I come with the light technology and go, come on, surely you're bored of playing this villain game for all these times, like let's play another game. I don't know, I'd like to see if I can try. So you know, so again, it's interesting with like Switzerland and these places that have money, they've got money, how the citizens allow that to dictate what maybe their souls would reject, possibly.
So what just came up for me as I listened to you, because, you know, you mentioned money, was, and to kind of circle back to your previous question, was that I realized, especially my generation, we don't know what war means. We don't know what natural catastrophes mean. Having grown up in Switzerland since the 90s, we've really had it well. And I think that's the one thing that gives me sort of a queasy feeling, is we might be taking a lot for granted that we're not aware of.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think also with what's happening on the rest of the world, you know, in the rest of the world, like the fires in Maui, and I just recently came across a post on social media where someone was saying, how prepared would I be for a scenario like that?
Yes.
You know, and I looked at myself and I thought, I'm miserably prepared, right? It's this
correct,
naive.
And this is why I mentioned Africa.
Yes, exactly, right? So to kind of tie into
can you
that,
live under the stars? Can you maybe drink some water for the river? Can you shit in the woods? You know,
exactly.
Can you make a fire?
Yes,
you know, like a lot of people can't even make a fire without like having a gas braai, which, you know, like
exactly.
It's like,
And I think so. To kind of come back to that, I think a lot of people, probably myself included to a certain degree, might be up for a rude awakening concerning that. I think, and I do think that it might be smart to at least be aware of the fact that we have been very, what's the word? Kind of protected. Yes. We've been very protected.
Yes.
And
of course you give gratitude to that, because what's interesting here again is, if you're looking from a quantum perspective, is timelines. So this is what's fascinating, is because that timeline of, let's call it the Swiss protected Swiss strength banking timeline, right? And beauty. Okay, I don't want to create, you know, beauty banking Swiss protected timeline. That could remain if the energetics of the entire population support that timeline. That timeline could remain.
Yes.
However, when we start expanding further and further and further in our consciousness, and we start to recognize, let's just say, the stark polarity of Christ versus Antichrist. And that starts stirring up things in your soul. Okay, so evil versus good. It's always been on the planet, and we can say there are no rights or wrongs. It's all part of the creation story, etc., etc., etc. But at some point in time, when you understand what Satanism is, it's not a little man with, you know, horns. It's an entire energetic fucking structure that is energized through a compliant belief system. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, you're like, oh, does this system begin to bend and crunch and crumble because people are like, whoa, why? Because we're opening up dimensionally. The energetics are changing. People's third eyes are popping open. People are having Kundalini experiences. They are not prepared for that because they've been comfortable in the beautiful banking Swiss protected timeline, right? And whether they and because of this timeline, they don't really need to do much of the spiritual work, right? However, again, the Earth's frequencies are coming in, and it's activating the memories regardless of this timeline. And then deep existential questions need to be asked and answered. So this is where my interest lies. And who knows, that may take 5 years, 25 years, or 150 years. I don't know, you know, but I do know things are going at hyperspeed. I do know people's kundalinis are fucking popping open without anyone having any preparation nor knowledge of how to deal with it. And it's intense. This is my work. I know this is happening. So this is where I'm like, are the Europeans ready?
And I think, sorry,
go for it.
As you were speaking, I felt like, we definitely have quite something to integrate. And it feels to me like us in Switzerland, it's a part of it's the more primal nature. It's the more primal nature as well, you know, like I don't know if instinctual is the right word, but the part of us that's a bit more raw. And yes, also maybe more intuitive. The wildish nature, kind of. And
because I mean, the Swiss also have LSD, you know.
yes, we do.
I think there is an openness. I think there is an openness, but there is maybe not so much of a realness. That it's been comfortable. And that's okay, you know. You guys, you know, it's like one has to really check in on oneself and say, is because one is white privileged, we now have to hold the guilt and shame of those in this incarnation, like the millions of people in India who are living in New Delhi on the streets. Like, does guilt and shame help as a frequency, or does compassion and action change? You know, so this is also the thing. It's not anyone's fault that they were in this lineage, but it's.
And there are things that I see that make me feel hopeful. Beautiful. I do see, you know, and I think that's generally speaking. I mean, sure, anything's. I feel like any outcome's possible, and without you know, adding any value judgment to it, because it's going to take us wherever it's going to go, and it's an evolution anyways.
Correct. And it's a grand experience.
Yes. But I do have hope when I look at even the younger generation than me. I can already see so many limits just dissolving. Boxes dissolving. I see so much more potential. I just got chills. And And wherever I see connectedness, I also see that being humans, and being connected, and just simple things like, for example, you know, valuing family and still caring about what your grandmother has to say, for instance. It's
Yes.
these connections, I feel like just connectedness as human beings, and the
Yes.
love that connects us, and the understanding. I feel like this is what
Yes.
what will, form the ground
Yeah.
of wherever we're going.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I think that's a nice closure for our chats. I actually called my grandmother yesterday, and I mean, it's so cute. She's like, I know she's got her hearing aid in, but she just speaks so loud. So as it rings, she's like, "Ah," just like, hey.
Oh my God.
She's so cute, and she's so impressed with my German. So that made her really happy. So yeah, I'm grateful to have called in on old grandmama
So
yesterday.
cute.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sarah. I really look forward to having you in the temple space
Thank you.
and getting to
Likewise,
know
yeah.
you a little bit more. Thank you for the chat,
It's
your
been a pleasure.
perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. We'll touch base soon. Thank you to everyone for touching base with Delicately Wild. Any comments, love and support are welcomed. And to you guys as well, have a beautiful day. Ciao.